Todd Rundgren, it is good to have you back at noise11.com. It's going to be even better to get you back down in Australia. And, well, the way it's going, Todd, I think a permanent residency isn't too far away for you.
Oh, God, so tempting, especially the situation up here. But yeah, I always look forward to coming to Australia, especially now that I've been there a few times and I have some friendships going and familiar places that I like to visit. So yeah, I kind of feel quite comfortable when I'm down there.
Well, fun fact, Hawaii's biggest trading partner is Australia, and I'm pretty much sure that these Todd Rundgren tours keep both of our economies in the black.
Yeah, I'm a commodity now.
Yeah, there were some surprises on the last tour, the night the carousel burned down, for instance. Are you planning on digging deep and throwing a few surprises from out of the box this time around?
Well, it won't be the same set as last time. The last couple of shows, we went to some pains to get to that older material on the assumption that most of the fans never got to see me in my heyday in the 70s and 80s. And so they would like to perhaps relive that material. But of course, it's 2025 now, and I haven't stopped making music. So there is a lot of ground to cover. And so we're playing a show, a variation of the show that I've been doing in the U.S., which is deep cuts and fan favorites and a smattering of the short list of hits that I have. So it won't be so much of the older stuff. The last time we were here, we didn't get much past the 70s. A little bit past a little bit into the 80s, I guess. But now we're going to be getting a little closer to the current day.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the medley of hits, the short list of hits.
Yeah.
Geez, putting them all into one song, Todd. You're turning into Dionne Warwick.
Well, the reason why I did that is because, for a song like "How Lost Me," I've done so many freaking times, and it's hard to muster the sincerity. But I acknowledge that the fans like to hear it because these old songs take people back to like the first time they heard them and when they were young and carefree and that sort of thing. So I realize the importance of playing them. But, once I've given them sort of the meat of the song, I think they're fairly satisfied with that. They don't have to hear the whole freaking thing. If you give them a significant part or the most significant part of the song, that's enough to take them to that place.
One of the set lists that I was looking at in more recent months, you dug deep back to Liars and actually did quite a few tracks off the Liars album from 2004, Stood Up and Afterlife. They've rarely been performed.
Well, as a matter of fact, I performed Afterlife for the first time the last time I toured Australia. Because that was before I put together the tour that I did last year. And I wanted to try it out. I had never done it live, and I enjoyed doing it. And also Stood Up was a song that I had performed live, but that was when I was out with Joe Jackson at a string quartet. And so we did this kind of very stripped down arrangement of it that was appropriate to the instrumentation. But we won't be doing that particular song. That song requires a certain other instrumentation that we don't have. In my American band, I've got a guy who plays reeds and flute and various wind instruments and other things. So a lot of those colors we're not able to properly reproduce with the quartet of musicians that we've got.
Yeah, well, you've got your Australian band again, Davey Lane and Tony Featherstone, my good friends, who are your good friends. and
Yes.
they will be joining you once again. And, as I mentioned to you before, they know Todd Rundgren better than Todd Rundgren knows Todd Rundgren. If
Yeah, and that's
if
why
there
they
was a
might like
doctorate
it.
in Todd Rundgren, they'd both be doctors.
Yeah, they did. That's why they're into doing things like The Night the Carousel Burnt Down, a song that I had never played live before. So it's fun. It's fun trying to meet the challenges they come up with. And in some cases, we're kind of like they have favorites that they want to do, but I'm, maybe don't actually feel like doing it. And so we have to negotiate a bit about which songs are actually in the set. But, once we've decided, they play it like, yeah, like professors, they play it like like they were born to play it. So it's great.
You had the autobiography in 2018, The Individualist, Digressions, Dreams, and Dissertations. Um, how much was left out? Is there another book in you?
Well, the book goes up to my 50th birthday, which was in 1998. And that was, I started writing the book in the 90s. And I didn't have the discipline to finish it in the time frame. I actually had a deal with someone to release the book, and that completely lapsed because I didn't deliver in a timely manner. And, the whole thing was like homework to me, and I had a hard time figuring out exactly how I was going to accomplish it. But when I finally did, I realized that all the interesting stuff happened mostly up until my 50th birthday. And then after that, things got kind of more pedestrian. You have kids, you're raising your kids. I'm spending a lot of time at baseball games, things like that, which doesn't make particularly interesting copy. So it's possible that at some far later date, I will have accumulated enough in additional interesting experience that it's worth relating. But yeah, a lot of I moved to Hawaii. I was not living in, a showbiz city or a city where I was, um, where I was likely to, have some unusual adventures, perhaps. I was living a, day-to-day life in Hawaii. And when I wasn't doing that, I was just out touring, a journeyman's job. So, yeah, at some point, maybe there's something else, but up till now, I can't think of what it is.
Yeah, because you've continued to have that influence on the younger acts, Lemon Twigs, Fleet Foxes, as well as Davey, who's from UMI, Tony, who's played with the Barnes band Noiseworks down in Australia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, the younger guys seem to be giving momentum to you as well.
Well, in a certain sense, and I think it's because um, things, music is it's kind of like a spiraling thing. It's, it goes through these phases and then they sort of repeat every once in a while. And sometimes, musicians, they're kind of enterprising enough that they just get tired of the music that their own generation is making and are looking for other influences. And since you can't go into the future, they go into the past and start looking for things that they think are interesting and inspiring in some way to them. And so I've gotten a lot of I've gotten a lot of mileage and some great relationships with these younger acts because my records are unconventional. I never had like a long string of radio hits that everyone's already familiar with. There's a lot, especially like if you're a young person, there's decades worth of stuff to discover. So I think part of the advantage is that I haven't stayed in one stylistic place. I tend to move around and synthesize styles together every once in a while, and that just makes it for some people more interesting listening.
I think the fact that musicians like Todd Rundgren, because you've got two catalogues. You've got the catalogue of albums that you created, the Todd Rundgren albums, you also got the catalogue of albums you produced for other people. And musicians also, they're very focused on how a sound comes together and what the producer does in the studio. That must also be another attraction, I would imagine, that a lot of these younger guys have for you.
Perhaps, but the whole, a lot of it has changed. Part of the reason why, particularly in the late 60s, 70s, and into the 80s, the cost of recording became very expensive. And, you needed a label to front the money, and the label didn't want frittering around in the studios. So they usually wanted somebody to control the process, if nothing else, just to keep the prices from going crazy. So in those days, there were very few acts. I was one of the few that had access to a studio of my own. And that was part of what allowed me to do a lot of that experimentation. And the advantage, at least, that musicians have today is there is no real financial impediment to them making records. So in a lot of ways, they can take the inspiration that they might get from me or some other musician, but they don't have to go through the expense of hiring me to do something. They take the inspiration and then they open up their laptop, whatever, and they start making music of their own. And they don't really need me to tell them how to do it.
I guess as in your career, though, you've been the fly on the wall, which is a very privileged position to be in. You've seen how the Dragon album was made, the Meat Loaf album was made, the XTC album was made.
Oh, God.
How much of you...
Dear God, yeah.
Yeah, dear God, very good, very good. Yeah. How much of you is in the sound of all those records?
At least my approach to production is not the same on every record. It is, there's different needs for each sort of act. And often you don't know. I'm not the kind of producer who has a formula, and the formula is based on what's already successful and stuff like that. That's why I usually wind up working with so-called problem acts. They're having trouble getting started on a project. An example was Badfinger. They had already recorded a whole album with Jeff Emmerich, and the American label was not satisfied with it, so they started on another record with George Harrison, and George Harrison got distracted by the concert for Bangladesh and everything around that, and that's when they called me, and it took about 10 days to finish the record after that, and it had a couple of hits on it. So my whole approach is what is the problem here? What could be the problem here? And let me take that off their mind, whether it's a solo act or a band. Let me take those problems off their minds so they only focus on making music. And the problems are different in all situations. Sometimes they're having trouble coming up with material. Sometimes they're bringing issues from outside the studio into the studio, old grudges and stuff like that. So there's a whole range of kind of tools that you need to bring to bear depending on who you're working with.
Yeah, if only you were around for Fleetwood Mac rumors.
No,
you could have been a therapist.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That's kind of the problem with success. Bands that got along great, all the way up until the point that they were successful, and then they start arguing about money, and they suddenly got these opportunities to go solo and stuff like that. So success sometimes is the worst thing that can happen to a band.
Your name is on the biggest selling album of all time in Australia, Bat Out of Hell. It's still up there. And I think no one has gone past that one in Australia at the moment. Still the biggest selling album of all time. Bat Out of Hell, we no longer have Meat, we no longer have Jim, but the legacy continues on. We have a band in Australia called Chocolate Starfish. I don't know if you're familiar with Chocolate Starfish.
Oh, God, what a name.
All right. Well, that
butthole
aside,
surfers, yeah.
that aside, they're going out. They've been touring Bat Out of Hell regularly for I would guess the best part of the last decade. Regular tours. They're about to go out again. Were there any production technique tricks that you were using in the studio that when you hear other people perform the songs live, they tend to miss in a live performance?
Well, we recorded the album live, not the vocals. Meat sang along, but the vocals took a whole other kind of effort to get them right. But the instrumentation, we rehearsed the band for 2 weeks before we went into the studio, and all of those takes are substantially live or cut together live takes. And so, like Bat Out of Hell is as you hear it, that's how we played it. And, I didn't play the guitar solo on the first pass. I was just playing, the basic other stuff. But, or I may have, it's hard to remember. Like I say, we did rehearse for 2 weeks. And so we were ready to, to play the entire record straight through if we had to. So in that respect, somebody doing it live is kind of the way it was done.
The new Cars, I want to get onto them. There was a live album that was never a studio album. Are there unrecorded studio tracks from the new Cars?
No, we had enough trouble getting those tracks done. We hadn't even toured yet as a band when we were doing these, those recordings. They were supposed to be part of our whole promotion, get a new single out. And then, we didn't have the time or resources to record a whole album by a band that no one was fully familiar with. So, we managed to eke out those couple of tunes. And then we did the live recording, which I thought came off pretty good. We were well rehearsed. And the difference between us and the original Cars is that we were allowed to have fun. The original Cars, Rick Ocasek insisted nobody smile. Don't smile, and just play like a bunch of robots because we're new wave, And so, we had a lot more fun and really bit into the material a lot harder than the Cars ever did, in some respects, no disrespect to the band, but with Prairie Prince on the drums and Chasm on the bass, we had much more solid and rock and rhythm section.
So it was as much the Tubes as it was the Cars.
Yeah, it was actually more my band with two guys from the Cars. Yeah.
Well, time to wrap up here because we are going to see you back down in Australia very, very soon. I look forward to that. The set list, who knows? We'll spin that wheel and see what happens on the night, huh, Todd?
Yeah, okay. We'll see. We'll try not to upset anybody.
All right, great to see you here again at Noise 11. Look forward to the Australian tour for 2025.
Terrific.